Hello friends, today we are going to study chapter 6, that is learning. In this chapter, the first question that comes into our mind is what is learning? In human beings, learning takes place from birth through reflexes. For example, when we prick a balloon in front of baby, जब हम एक छोटे बच्चे के सामने balloon prick करते हैं, baby suddenly डर जाता है or he starts blinking his eyes. So these actions are called reflex actions. So as the child grows and comes in the contact with nature and environment, he or she learns to give better responses to the particular stimuli. Like when we touch a hot pan or hot boiling water, our reflex action suddenly pulls our hand back from the pan. So touching the hot pan gives a burning sensation in our hand. So this burnt experience gives us a learning that from next time we do not have to touch a hot pan. So basically experiences gives us learning. Every experience gives us a sort of learning. So the formal definition of learning would be that learning is defined as any relatively permanent change in behavior or behavioral potential produced by experience. As young infants, we learn many different things like to hold hand and learn walking, to hold ourselves upright. We use our hands to do many small work. When we grow up a little bit and go to primary classes or primary school, we learn to read, write, and memorize the information for our exams or pen paper tests. So with age, with step by step, we learn new things and different changes come within our personality. Now every individual have some different individual learning in their personalities. Like some people are afraid of insects, so as soon as they come across a lizard or a cockroach, they suddenly start screaming or they suddenly get panic. Then some individuals have uh, uh, some individuals are scared from dentists or doctors or injections. So these are some examples, like every individual have different sort of learning. So and these learning are not relatively permanent, they can change with time. So human being face learning in every phase of life. Now we are going to study about some basic features of learning. So the first feature of learning is that learning always involves experience. The change in behavior must result through a particular experience or practice. A proper practice from a long time also leads to learning and change in the behavior. We experience an event occurring in a certain sequence. Every event that occurs in our life comes with a particular sequence, with a particular sequence of events. It can be positive and negative. Negative event sequence of event leads to bad things in life. It comes up again and again. Sometimes it's positive, then positive things in life can pile up and it can give happiness in a sequence. So if an event happens, then it may be followed by many other events in life. For example, in a classroom scenario, when a teacher enters, students are asked to wish the teacher, to show them gratitude and respect. But if a student doesn't follow this rule or disobeys, and he does not wish his teacher, then in that case the teacher would punish him or scold him in front of the class. सब पूरी क्लास के सामने उसको इंसल्ट किया जाएगा, टीचर उसको डांटेगी, which will make him feel bad. So this is a bad learning for him. He will be punished. So next time से बच्चे को अनकॉन्शियस माइंड में एक लर्निंग होगी फ्रॉम हिज पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस कि जब उसने टीचर को विश नहीं किया, ही गॉट पनिश्ड, इंसल्टेड इन फ्रंट ऑफ द क्लास, सो नेक्स्ट टाइम से मुझे टीचर को विश करना है. सो दिस इज लर्निंग फ्रॉम एक्सपीरियंस. The second feature is behavioral change that occur due to learning are relatively permanent, which says learning leads to change in behavior, but this change is not permanent. अब ये चेंज हमेशा परमानेंट नहीं होता है. इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी दैट जब भी हर बार हमारे घर में कोई बड़ा आए या इफ़ देयर सम एल्डर इन फ्रंट ऑफ अस, हम बहुत बार भूल जाते हैं उन्हें विश करना, हमें याद नहीं रहता उन्हें विश करना. तो इट्स नॉट दैट अगर हमने एक बार सीख लिया दैट वी नीड टू विश तो हम हमेशा करेंगे. मेनी टाइम्स वी फॉरगेट इट. Behavior learned by individuals can be changed, modified, or even unlearned. And this behavior is such a behavior which can be modified. For example, in adolescent age or in teenage, there are many individuals who learn to smoke in peer pressure or by seeing their friends, they learn to smoke. But when smoking starts harming their health, or they start getting lung problems, or they become asthmatic, they realize that they had learned a bad habit which is not good for their health. So they uh, they, they decide to quit smoking or to reduce smoking. It's not easy to quit smoking, so initially the individual will decide to reduce and then he will make a decision to quit smoking. So in this case, first the individual learns to smoke from their peers, from their social environment, but later when he gets the realization, he modifies his learning and he tries to unlearn that process. That is, he tries to quit smoking. The third feature is habituation. In this form of learning, there is a change in behavior due to a continuous exposure of stimuli. That is, वो stimuli बार बार आपके क्रॉस आता है, आप उसके क्रॉस बार बार आते हो. There is a continuous exposure, and after a point, the individual gets habitual to that change. Means एक point के बाद आपको फ़र्क ही नहीं पड़ता है उससे कि आप किसी चेंज के क्रॉस आ रहे हो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ देयर इज अ मैरिज फंक्शन गोइंग ऑन इन योर लोकेलिटी, अगर आपके लोकेलिटी में कोई शादी हो रही है और कोई पूजा हो रही है, देयर इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ नॉइसफुल इन्वायरमेंट इन योर लोकेलिटी, तो कुछ टाइम तक आपको वो नॉइज़ बॉदर करेगी. इनिशियली द नॉइज़ विल डिस्ट्रैक्ट एंड यू माइट मेक सम ओरिएंटिंग रिफ्लेक्सेस. आप इनिशियली बोलोगे ओ गॉड दिस इज सो डिस्टर्बिंग, बहुत डिस्टर्बेंस हो रहा है. यू विल गेट अ बिट रेस्टलेस, but gradually these reflexes will become weaker and weaker and eventually it will be undetectable to you. After a point आपको वो noise half an hour disturb करेगी, 40 minutes disturb करेगी, but when you start concentrating on your subject, on what work you're doing, आप एक concentration से जब करने लगेंगे तो आपको वो noise bother ही नहीं करेगी. It will be undetectable to you. आपको उस चीज़ से फ़र्क ही नहीं पड़ेगा. Hence the individual would be habitual to the noise. So this is habituation. The last feature is inferred processes. Now, learning is an inferred process and it is different from performance. Now, what is performance? Performance is a person's observed behavior or a response. Performance is जब आप कोई चीज़ किसी के सामने प्रेजेंट करते हो तो उसे परफॉर्मेंस कहते हैं. एंड देयर आर पीपल टू ऑब्जर्व योर परफॉर्मेंस. परफॉर्मेंस इज बीइंग ऑब्जर्व. But in inferred process, your particular performance is being analyzed. For example, जब आप छोटे होते हो तो you present poem in front of your classmates or in front of your school. So there are number of people in the audience. So the audience are there to observe your performance. जब आप अपनी poem recite करते हैं उनके सामने, तो audience आपकी poem observe करते हैं, सुनते हैं. But the judges, they make an inference of your performance. They analyze your performance. On the basis of this, you get prizes or you win the competition. So this is known as inferred process. Now comes the types of learning. There are basically two major types of learning, that is classical conditioning and operant conditioning. These are the two major types of learning which comes under psychology. And there are many additional learnings like observational learning, cognitive learning, verbal learning, concept learning and skill learning. These are other additional learnings, but the two major जो सबसे important learning होती है, vast part जो involve करती है psychology में, that is classical and operant conditioning. So today we are going to cover classical conditioning. Our next topic is classical conditioning, which was investigated by Ivan P. Pavlov, who conducted the first experimental study on learning. He was mainly interested in the physiology of digestion. Later he noticed that the dog started secreting as the empty plate was being served, and as we know, saliva secretion is a reflexive response to the food. So Pavlov became fascinated with these psychic secretions, and he decided to investigate an experiment to understand this process. So here's how classical conditioning was being conducted on a dog. In this experiment, first a setup was being given by Ivan P. Pavlov, in which a hungry dog was being placed in a box and a tube was being inserted in his jaw, in his mouth, and the other end of the tube was being placed in a jar to record the amount of saliva being secreted by the dog when he sees the food, or when he gives the response to the food. So this was the setup for the experiment. Then when the experiment was started, a bell was sounded, and immediately thereafter the food was being served to the dog. The dog was allowed to eat the food, and this process was being कंटिन्यूड फॉर फ्यू डेज. पहले बेल बजती थी, एंड बेल बजने के बाद डॉग को फूड दे दिया जाता था, उसके सामने फूड रख दिया जाता था, एंड ही वाज अलाउड टू ईट दैट फूड. आफ्टर फ्यू डेज a test trial was being conducted in which almost everything was same except that there was no food being followed to the sound of bell. Means bell baji but dog के सामने food नहीं रखा गया, and the result was that the dog still salivated on the sound of bell. Dog ने फिर भी salivate किया जैसे ही उसने bell की sound सुनी. So this association between the bell and the food resulted in acquisition of a new response by the dog. That was that he salivated on the sound of bell. उसने bell की sound पे ही react किया and he salivated in it. So this change was basically termed as conditioning. This change in his action was termed as conditioning. So basically in conditioning, in classical conditioning, before the conditioning, the food was the unconditioned stimulus, and the salivation on the food was the unconditioned response. And after the conditioning, the bell was the conditioned stimulus, and salivation to the sound of bell was the conditioned response. Here is a chart which is a summary of the classical conditioning process, which says that before the conditioning, the dog salivated on the presentation of food. During the conditioning, the sound of bell and the food was together, so there was the dog also salivated. Still, the dog during the conditioning, the dog salivated on the presentation of food, but after the conditioning, the dog salivated on the sound of bell because he was conditioned to this. So the last topic is determinants of classical conditioning. The first determinant is time relations between stimuli. The classical conditioning basically involves four types, which is based on time relation between the onset of conditioned stimuli and unconditional stimuli. The first type is simultaneous conditioning, when the CS and the US, that is the conditioned stimulus and unconditional stimulus, are presented together. That is, बेल बजते ही खाना दे दिया जाता है and it's together. जिस टाइम बेल बजती है उसी टाइम खाना आ जाता है. The second is delayed conditioning. In this, the onset of conditioned stimuli precedes the onset of unconditional stimuli, and the conditioned stimuli ends before the end of the unconditional stimuli. That is, जब बेल बजती है उसके बाद फूड प्रेजेंट किया जाता है, बट बेल ख़त्म होने से पहले ही द फूड हैज़ टू बी प्रेजेंटेड. दिस इज डिलेड कंडीशनिंग. द थर्ड टाइप इज trace conditioning. In this, the onset and end of the conditioned stimulus precedes the onset of unconditional stimulus with some time gap between the two. In this conditioning, the बेल बजने के कुछ टाइम बाद फूड दिया जाता है, दैट इज़ विद सम पर्टिकुलर टाइम गैप. सो पहले बेल बजती है, उसके बाद आफ्टर फ्यू मिनट्स द फूड इज़ बीइंग प्रेजेंटेड. So it has a particular time gap. The last one is backward conditioning. This one is the opposite procedure. In this, the food is first presented and then the bell rings. That is, the unconditional stimuli precedes the onset of CS. खाना पहले आ जाता है, उसके बाद बेल बजती है. The second determinant is type of unconditional stimuli. So basically there are two types of unconditional stimuli that are appetitive and aversive. So the appetitive unconditional stimuli are automatically elicits approach responses such as eating, drinking, caring, etc. These responses give satisfaction and pleasure to the individual. So they are basically a kind of positive unconditional stimuli because they give us satisfaction and pleasure. जब हम किसी की केयर करते हैं या जब हम बहुत hungry होते हैं and we eat food, it gives us a kind of satisfaction and pleasure. So that is a positive reaction. So it is a positive unconditional stimuli. The second is aversive unconditional stimuli, such as noise, bitter taste, electric shock, or painful injections, are etc. And these are painful and harmful and elicit avoidance and escape responses. So these are basically negative unconditional stimuli which are painful for an individual. People try to escape from them. इन स्टिमुलाई से एक पर्टिकुलर इंडिविजुअल भागना चाहता है, वो इनसे बचना चाहता है बिकॉज दे आर पेनफुल, दे आर हार्मफुल. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, बहुत ज़्यादा नॉइज़ हो या इफ़ यू गेट समथिंग बैड टू ईट और if you get a bitter gourd to eat, so the child avoids to eat that because he or she doesn't like the taste of it. So it is the unconditional stimuli. The third determinant is intensity of unconditional stimuli. So this determinant influences both appetitive and aversive classical conditioning. And this basically says कि जितना ज़्यादा इंटेंस कंडीशन स्टिमुलाई होगा उतना ही इफ़ेक्टिव कंडीशनिंग होगी उस सब्जेक्ट पे. Which means that more intense the conditioned stimuli, the fewer are the number of acquisition trials needed for the condition. जितना ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट होगा उतने कम ट्रायल्स लगेंगे सब्जेक्ट को उस पर्टिकुलर कंडीशनिंग को अडेप्ट करने के. सो दिस इज़ ऑल फॉर this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like it, and if you like it, please like